In this video, I'm going to try to make a case for why fidelity and integrity and keeping one's commitments is the only recipe for living a free life. Instead of the impulse to say, I want to be free to do anything that crosses my mind anytime it crosses my mind, I hope to be able to convince one or two of us, even if it is just myself, that letting the rational side of our nature take, as Plato said, the controlling hand, is in fact the way to a productive and peaceful life. I've often recognized and shaken my head and been instructed by and used to teach the metaphor of two different dogs. We've all seen them. There's dog A that has never been given a command in its life. It's never received any training, it's never been disciplined, it has never heard the word no enforced. And so it is on a retractable leash. And the leash will stretch out there 15 or 20 feet. And guess what? The dog is always at the end of the leash, jumping against the restraint and trying to put its dirty paws up on strangers. And if it finds a 2-year-old, it will knock the 2-year-old down and lick its face until the 2-year-old cries so loud the mother comes and rescues it. The dog will not sit, the dog will not stay, the dog will run out in traffic, it will chase a bicycle. The dog is a short timer because sooner or later he's going to get off that leash and get killed on the road, right? Maybe your neighbor's maybe you've got that dog. Now contrast that to the other dog. And they come in all varieties, but I'm going to use a sheepdog, a border collie, with its master, walking through the field or down the sidewalk with no leash. Nothing restraining that dog whatsoever except his undeviating attention to the person that he loves and he has decided to listen to. He will do nothing. He will sit, he will stay until he starves to death. He will go, he will come, he will turn left, he will turn right. He will do anything that he is instructed to do, and he will love it. And he's perfectly free. Which dog is experiencing liberty? Which dog is experiencing freedom? The one who has no inclination at all to discipline his impulses, or the one who has become happy, and happy only, in disciplining his impulses and marching to the beat of the drum that he has decided will order his life? So with these two dogs in mind, and understanding, as every human does, that we are a seething cauldron of passions and desires and impulses, can you see that that wired up border collie had trained his passions? Can you see that if you, or primarily, if we can teach our children to educate their desires, to train their desires, to pay close attention to how they respond to what they want and what causes them to respond to what they want so that they can order that part of their personality, their freedom will increase. The freedom is not being free to jump out in traffic and get flattened. Freedom is the ability to feel the impulse to run, to understand when the right time comes to run or to jump or to buy or to sell or to fill in the blank. When the right time comes, then we do it. And until that time comes, we don't. And to do it any other way is in fact counterproductive and wrong. This, I think, is a better way to understand fidelity. Fidelity is not slavery to ideals. It is freeing us from the slavery of our passions. The low-hanging fruit to illustrate that is an addiction. Does anyone who is addicted to X, Y, or Z feel like that addiction is somehow freedom? Well, there is a whole range of human behaviors that are not chemical in nature, not even gambling or, fill in the blank. There are a whole range of behaviors to which we can become addicted. And when we are addicted to those behaviors, the other wonderful, productive things we could be doing are no longer either of interest or available to us, because the addiction giving in to what we want, supplanting what we know we ought to do with what we're powerless to resist, rules our life. That, repeating myself, is slavery. That, repeating myself, is running out to the end of the lead and jumping until the lead breaks and darting into traffic and being obliterated instead of pacing steadily, beautifully, attentively, according to the expectation of our better angels. So it was a couple years ago that I ran across a man named Robert P. George. He's a professor at Princeton, and he had proposed and had marched forward as diligently as he could to teach and recommend that we think of June, this optimistic, hopeful, budding month of June, as Fidelity Month. And he points out, graciously, that other people are free to ascribe whatever values they want to any month they want and create whatever holiday they want. But for him, and for me, I try to remember to think of June as Fidelity Month. Because fidelity is something that every human, is that too general? No. I think it's a universal value that people, however we live, however I live, I respect someone who demonstrates fidelity to a vow or a commitment or a promise they've made. It's sort of a universal human virtue, closely tied to integrity. I mean, if you think of integrity as a moral compass that inspires and regulates a person to do the right thing even when nobody's watching, well, fidelity perhaps is drilling down a little deeper into the notion of doing the right thing as it relates to other humans in the moment, to promises that we've made or promises that we've inherited or relationships that we've benefited from that come with the inference of commitment. To do that whether or not anyone's watching and whether or not anyone objects. Now, some will recoil from this because fidelity, I guess, and integrity is so closely tied to conscience. Conscience, and people have consciences, and it's amazing how similar our consciences are across cultures and across ages and generations and situations and classes and languages. Consciences in humans pretty much all sing the same song. And the song is, keep your word. Follow that moral compass. Listen to that little voice. Whatever source you ascribe that voice to, God, for me and for mine, to follow that voice of conscience, voice of reason, not just because there's something in you that says it's the right thing to do, but because your experience and the experience of wise people who have come before you will tell you that is the path to happiness. Shorthand for fidelity is fidelity in marriage. Yes, I'm not going to drill down on that too hard because you and I both know what the right thing is to do in terms of the promises that we've made to our husband or wife. We know. But have we thought carefully what fidelity to our children consists of? I can tell you this, quoting our Princeton professor, that to delegate or abdicate your responsibility to supervise and form your children to devices, screens. As Calvin and Hobbes described it, the flickering blue altar of passive entertainment, it's no longer a flickering blue altar, but to delegate or abdicate our responsibility to raise our children to devices is a dereliction of duty. It is infidelity to your children and your children's children and your children's children's children. I'm sorry to have to say that because, man, it's exhausting raising children in the best possible sense, with the biggest possible payoff. But in the moment, it seems so hopeless. Just like training that border collie puppy or that German short-hair puppy or that pointer or that whatever it is. Man, it seems so impossible because some of them are dense and some of them are willing and some of them are able. but they all can be turned into dogs that enjoy the freedom of obedience. Obedience is not a constraint. Obedience is a safeguard so that our passions can end up being only pleasure and not an impulse that leads to a lifetime of regret. This is one of the practical, undeniable aspects of fidelity that leads to peace and happiness. It shrinks your regret. One of the key concepts in fidelity and integrity, I believe, is training yourself to be willing to sacrifice. Now, human nature and politicians rely on the fact that people will never act against their self-interest. And Ayn Rand, preaching in the virtue of selfishness, says that somehow it's wrong to act against self-interest. Well, that is not helpful rhetoric. Even though in some cases it is true-ish, in most cases it's going to turn you into somebody you never intended to become. All of that to say that sacrifice in the context of being willing to do something that causes yourself a little pain in order to fulfill a promise or a commitment that you made will, I will say always educate your desires and bring you to a place where when you look back, you're going to say, you know, that was painful. You know, I'm sure glad I didn't miss the chance to accept that little bit of pain for this huge amount of freedom, this huge amount of peace, this huge amount of fraternity, this huge amount of satisfaction in my children as adults. Can you see that the sacrifices of the past shrink? Just like for that border collie. The discipline that he received when he was this big is forgotten. And what he's left with is a life of perfect freedom, being perfectly productive, and being perfectly rewarded by the person, the other, the one who he accepts as the one to provide guidance, which fills him up. Now, have I belabored that metaphor long enough? I don't know, maybe. I'll probably get to it again before I'm done, because think of that other dog, that muddy-footed, unwashed, slobbering, shedding, useless piece of the biomass for whom no one ever cared enough to force them to sacrifice. Well, only you can force yourself to sacrifice. I'm talking to the adults in the conversation. If you are going to accept the discipline and experience the growth of sacrifice, it's entirely up to you. As I wind this up, I've mentioned the connection between integrity and fidelity. And I want you to know that it hurts me a little bit to say these things because I know how imperfect I am, and I am a hypocrite. I will salve my conscience and say, yes, but we're all hypocrites. So what? The fact is, if we don't espouse something that is loftier than the way we're living right now, how are we ever going to grow into anything more? Well, we just won't. If we have educated our desires to where we desire to be better, guess what? Sustain that, and you will become better. And so I hope to become better. But the thing is, we can guard within ourselves against hypocrisy. We can't stop other people from calling us hypocrites. And by the way, hypocrite is from a Greek word, Hippocrates or something. Somebody pronounce that for me, which means actor, which is from theater, which is it spoke to the idea of this person can perform a role as if they were that role. They are a hypocrite. Well, nothing is more apparent to our children. Let's just say that we manage to not let their devices raise them. They might learn what we teach, but they almost can't help themselves from becoming significantly what we are. And nothing will unwind what you're trying to teach them faster than letting them see hypocrisy in yourself, Dad. This is why you have to not just act the part, but find the way, find the help, find the perspective. I'll recommend prayer, to actually become what it is that you're wanting to teach your kids to become. An indictment that I heard a long time ago of some particular person in higher education was that they were stating, maybe it was an administrator, to the professors, the professoriate, that our goal is to turn a young man or a young woman into someone as much unlike their father or mother as we possibly can. Well, let your kids see you be a hypocrite and you'll take care of that for them. So let the things you preach actually become the things you want. So default settings, the settings that we either come from the factory with or that we are indoctrinated by in the world, in the pond in which we swim. I'm thinking of consumerism. Boy, we're all trained to be consumers. I'm thinking of some liberationist philosophy. I'm thinking of identitarianism. I'm thinking about these things that drive us through our impulses, through how we feel and inflame our passions. And there's rhetoric out there that is perfect at inflaming these passions. It puts us in a position where we're living our life according to our sub-rational thought processes. That's no way to live. We can do better. So maybe you make a list of the promises you've made, of the people who have reason to expect certain things from you. Just jot it down. And then ask yourself, how am I doing in these things? How am I doing to country? Perhaps more importantly, how am I doing to community? How am I doing to parents? Those who gave you life, who chose to give you life and sustain you. I hope you had them. How about your spouse? How about your children? How about your neighbors? How about we add as much as we can to the list of people who have reason to expect us to keep our word? Because I'll tell you this, if you're in the snow and you're stuck and you're cutting firewood, you know how to get out of the snow? Throw more firewood on your truck. Get some traction. Push that truck down until whatever tread you've got on your tires, now there are exceptions to this, but it is weight that gives you traction. The traction enables you to let out the clutch and move forward. And I believe, and I think I can tell you that I've experienced, and I know I've seen people whose stature is a result of picking up a load, and then a little more, and accepting an obligation, and then a little more, and then letting their fidelity grow. Man, they're productive. They're an inspiration to everyone who knows them. Thank you for watching Essential Craftsman, and keep up the good work.